Oh, hi, I'm Faith. This is my phone. We're involved in a very significant relationship that I don't entirely understand. Ken Perlin, founding director of NYU's Media Research Lab, and actress Lois Smith, star of Marjorie Prime and Minority Report, join us to talk about how and why humans have developed real emotional attachments to our machines. Ahead on Science Goes to the Movies. Welcome to Science Goes to the Movies, a look at the stories of science and how they change our culture. I'm Faith Saley, and we're delighted today to have Lois Smith, the star of the movie Marjorie Prime, plus Ken Perlin, star of NYU's Computer Science Department. Welcome, stars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to start with the movie Marjorie Prime. In Marjorie Prime, starring John Hamm and Lois Smith, the elderly Marjorie is given a handsome new companion who looks like her deceased husband and is programmed to feed the story of her life back to her. And the new digital Walter is kind of wonderful, but he's not real.
Do you have emotions, or do you just remember ours?
You're a fine woman, Marjorie.
Am
It's a shame you can't drink. It'd loosen you up.
I'm not getting better, am I? Walter. No, not you. I don't want you. I want Walter.
Petty infringements, compromise, betrayal. All relationships are impossible.
Oh, Marjorie. The things you forget. Stay with me a while.
I'll be right here, Marjorie. I have all the time in the world.
So, Lois, in the beginning of the movie, Marjorie is not happy with this artificial projection of her late husband. But as the film moves forward, her daughter actually gets jealous of Marjorie's relationship as it develops with this program. And so, as an actress, how did you and Marjorie sort of transition from the distaste to the affection for this program?
It's interesting. I don't feel that that it makes that move. I've always felt that Marjorie had many views of Walter Prime because she is forgetful, but she knows what it is. She was partly responsible. She chose what age she wanted this. Wanted him to be. And then as the relationship moves, there are times when it's you're right that it progresses, increasingly meaningful, increasingly important to the life she's living. But I've never felt that it moved from distaste to something else, that it was a series of, because she's not lost in her mind.
So you don't think there's a point at which Marjorie willfully forgets that it's a program and just sort of...
Yeah, I think the willfulness and the more and less willfulness happens back and forth all the time. Yes, sometimes she may choose to, and then it becomes a conversation which is not unnatural.
Ken, right now in real life, do you have computer programs that you love?
Oh, well, we love our computer programs the way we love our cars, or the way we love, our favorite plushie toy. We know the difference, or a favorite movie. I don't think there's a vast divide between the things we love that are not people and the things we love that are people. And I think that relates to what you said about
to Marjorie Prime.
Marjorie Prime, because
I agree.
I think she knows very, very well that this is an extremely fancy picture frame. And I don't think she's confused about that. And in fact, the idea of bringing him back at this point in his life, which is clearly cutting out a whole bunch of decades of complicated emotional development in their relationship, I think that's a fascinating choice, because that tells you she is a surprising person. She doesn't do the obvious thing and says, oh, I'll just bring back this person. Instead, she says, I'm going to play with this.
Yeah.
In almost all movies and TV shows about artificial intelligence, the computer is rogue and evil. But on the Netflix sci-fi series Travelers, we get to see a softer side of AI and a harder side of Eric McCormack. Scarlett Johansson's Her wants to help people until she gets bored with humans, and Walter from Marjorie Prime brings comfort to his own widow. And I, Faith Saley, in real life, for better or for worse, am having a personal relationship with my phone. You know, we keep talking about fiction and the future, but it's kind of already here, and we kind of really like it. So scientists and artists, you know, from your different points of view, are we already emotionally bound to our machines, do you think?
What you're saying that as though that's something new. I mean, the Victorians would have said that they were bound to their machines.
Which were? What were their machines?
You know, their clocks, their steam engines, all of these magical things that were very new at the time. You know, there was a huge movement it started actually in the 1700s and right through the 1800s of mechanical dolls, you know, you'd wind them up and they would write letters. And people knew they weren't real, but they were very emotionally attached to them. I'm not sure that things are that different. They knew they weren't real. You know your phone isn't a person, and you just become emotionally attached to it, as we do.
However, I would argue that the things that our phone, I mean, they're called smartphones, right? The things that our phones can do now, the fact that it I mean, my children are too small to have a phone, but it connects me at any time with their caregiver, so I can know how they're doing immediately, or she sends me pictures, or that I have videos of them stored and you know, priceless pictures. I would feel devastated if I lost the contents of my phone, more than I would guess, you know, a Victorian person might feel about a clock.
Well, I think it's interesting is that everything that you've just described is using the latest technology in a way that the emotional impact on you is the way it connects you to another human being.
Yes.
So maybe a better analogy with the Victorians was the extremely new technology of photography. People would be devastated if they lost their photographs, particularly because they were very expensive back then.
And what do you think, Lois?
I was thinking when you were speaking that partly what you're talking about is time. And time is perceived and used really differently, even in my little lifetime. Certainly with our telephones, the things you were describing about the constant keeping in touch and I remember many years ago when the Berlin Wall, there were so many things, and I remember saying, this happened in computer time. That's the first time I remember making that connection. But
What does that mean, computer time?
So much faster than we could ever have imagined events would transpire. Like daily on the street, I'm in touch with somebody that we're meeting at a certain point in a certain place, and instant.
Yeah.
I think there's a subtle point there that when I was in high school, if I wanted to meet someone in the park, and we made a plan to meet in the park, you had to go to the park.
Yes.
There was no choice because you couldn't
Or
call
else
them
be
up
a
and
real
tell them.
bad guy.
Yeah, because they would
Yes.
just go to the park and
Yes.
they'd be stuck there. And now there's an entire generation that has never had that experience.
Yes.
And because they've never had that experience, to them it would seem crazy that you would have a world where you couldn't just cancel or change a plan because all of the social conventions have changed. But here's the important thing is that when I was in high school, I didn't feel as though anything was missing. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, if only I could reach this person. That was just some conjectural sci-fi future. So I think that with every generation's technology, they think they're in the modern world, and they're not thinking, oh, I can't believe I'm living in this primitive culture. They just take for granted the technology they know, and they just call that reality. The great pioneering computer scientist Alan Kay says that technology is whatever was invented after you were born.
Marjorie's Walter was a digital reproduction of a person. And just to give you an idea of how easy it is to reproduce humans in the digital world, we took our producer, Lisa Beth Kovets, and eternal good sport physics professor Vinod Menon for a down and dirty, very fast 3D scan. threw them into a game engine, and now we've got them dancing Gangnam Style whenever we want on a screen or in VR. Oh, they got moves. Look at that. Totally in sync.
Amazing.
But Ken, in your lab at NYU, you have a future reality manifesto, right?
Okay.
Which sort of talks about moving these technologies out of the digital world and into shared physical spaces.
Yeah.
So is that going to change the way we see theater and make movies, perhaps?
Yes.
In what ways?
Well, I think, for example, right now, when you go to a movie, you see a big rectangle, and you see people with faces 20 or 30 feet high, and they're flat. And no matter what you do, they're going to give the same performance in that movie. So we know that's a movie. We understand that. When you go to the theater, you don't get all these special effects, but you have this amazing quality of interaction between the actor on the stage and the audience, and this is what creates the excitement of theater.
Only that moment. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the only time that a moment ever happens, the only place. And I think what's going to start to happen is people are going to start to use emerging technologies to play around with trying to combine elements of liveness and responsiveness of theater and the physical immersion of theater with the sense that anything is possible that you get with movies.
Really?
How?
I think so.
How?
Tell us both.
Well, I think what's going to happen is that people will start, first of all, we're doing a project in our lab where everybody gets a kind of a VR headset. And you put on the VR headset, and it's as though you're sitting in a physical theater with people, but everybody, you could think of it as been transported to the Star Trek holodeck. And because virtual reality is very good at this, somebody walks out on stage, you hear their footsteps, you hear their voice, you see them look at people, and it feels as though they're really there, even though it's actually more of a movie-like experience.
But we're all seeing the same thing in the audience?
We're seeing things from our own perspective, which is more like theater. You would see things from your perspective. But then you could start doing things that are a little bit like no one's ever done before, like the actor turns, and this is a performance that's already been recorded, but it's being played back just like you see Lisa there in a way that could be modified while you're watching it. So the actress turns to look over there, and maybe everybody over there sees the actress look personally at them. It's something, but nobody over there does. That's something that's not like theater, and it's not like film. It's another thing. And then, of course, the question is, what would you do with that? Well, that's not about technology. That's about, when film was new in the 1890s, people kept thinking, oh, we'll just do theater. But of course, that was wrong. You have to develop a new kind of artistry. Spielberg isn't doing theater. He's doing something else. So I think that as we develop new technologies that are more immersive for people being able to be told a story together, there'll be new kinds of artists who will understand how to use these emerging media. But it's all too new to really understand what that would feel like. It would be like trying to predict what will movies feel like in 1895. It's too soon now.
Tell us all about your project, Holojam in Wonderland.
Oh, there we tried to do a live theater piece in which everybody in the room, the actors and the audience, were all wearing virtual reality headsets. So the
actors?
Yeah, everybody was. And everybody was tracked wherever they were in the room so that the computer software knew where everybody was, and the audience members saw each other as virtual characters, and they saw the live actors as virtual characters. So you had this kind of combination of live theater and a sort of magical realist animation, but it was a live performance.
And the actors knew what they were.
Yes.
They were scripted, as it were.
That's right. They were telling a story that had been scripted, but of course they could do little bits of improvisation because it was a live performance.
What do you think of that, Lois?
I was thinking about Jordan Harrison, who wrote the play Marjorie Prime, which was then Michael Almereyda adapted the play and directed the movie. But Jordan, I remember saying in an interview that we did together a few years ago, since I've been with this play a long time, that he was bringing together technology and humanity. Mm. Well, I think that's what he did in this play, and I think it's, in a certain way, maybe the jumping off point from what you're talking about, and it's an endless subject, isn't it, which we can only look forward. But, the primes in Marjorie Prime were made by people. We start there. What comes next in terms of the interaction? That's what we're talking about. And
Yeah.
I love the idea that recently there are more friendly, less appalling views of what our computer friends are going to do with and to us.
Yeah, for many years, AIs have been the good go-to, as the ultimate bad guys in our movie nightmares.
Yes.
And here at Science Goes to the Movies, we looked at a list of evil fictional computers, and it's long, from False Maria in Metropolis to HAL to Ultron to Samaritan. And it occurred to us that in all these stories about dangerous AIs, the nightmare computers have two things in common. The computer programs have a personality, and they have power to move beyond the computer box. So as a scientist, as an artist, as humans, what do you think about these stories? Should we be worried about computers who can, one, step out of their computer box, and two, have personalities?
Well, I completely agree with what you said. I think that there's a distinction to be made between the tools we create, the piano, the piece of music, the flush toilet, and this dystopian fantasy that, oh my gosh, our machines are going to replace us. And I think that this dystopian fantasy has nothing to do with computers. And the reason I think it has nothing to do with computers is we saw exactly the same idea in The Golem in the Middle Ages, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. These were not computers. They were just, oh, we create something and we have, you get religious about it. We've defied the will of God and now we must be punished because humans aren't supposed to do that. There's something very metaphysical about we create something and it replaces us. But in reality, I think these are tools. And I think one of the things that I love about the work, Marjorie Prime, is it never makes the mistake of saying, oh, that AI is the person. It makes it very clear that that's a very, very, very fancy interface for you to evoke memories. And nobody in the movie is thinking, oh, Walter's come back. And I think it's a very important that it doesn't go to the place where Her went, where you go to the Frankenstein myth or the Skynet from Terminator. Our machines replace us and now they have will and now they're looking at us and saying, no, it's our world, not yours. There's a very prevalent dystopian fantasy, but I think it doesn't really match the reality of our relationship with our creations.
And we watched Lisa Beth and dancing, but I don't think we were confused about
No.
Right, that's right.
what happened,
Ken, I've talked to you before, and you seem to be always, let me put it this way, you seem never afraid of AI in the way that so many of us are. And it occurs to me when I hear you talk so sanguinely about a very cool future alongside AI, with AI, that there really is a huge effect of the stories we tell in our culture, in pop culture, about how we embrace this kind of evolution of artificial intelligence. Is Marjorie Prime one of the only stories you can think of where there's not something sort of insidious and pernicious in a meaningful AI character?
I think yes, it's one of the few, and the reason I think that it's a brave move is that it's very easy to engage an audience by telling a Frankenstein story. I mean, everybody gets, there's the monster shows up and the monster wants to eat us or replace us or attack us, and everybody goes to see that movie. But to tell a movie that is only about us, where we ultimately are responsible for our own fate, and you cannot, invoke, the killer piano or the killer car or the killer whatever, is harder to do. But I think it's a more mature inquiry about the human condition.
Let's talk a little about Minority Report. Based on a story by Philip K. Dick, this Steven Spielberg film takes place in the year 2054, where police utilize a psychic technology called pre-crime to arrest and convict murderers before they commit their crime. Lois Smith plays Dr. Iris Heinemann, who created the tech used in pre-crime. Now, this is a 2002 film, so I'm just going to whisper spoiler alert as we discuss the plot of the movie. Lois, as Dr. Heinemann, was working for the greater good when she created pre-crime, but her science was stolen and used for evil, which is perhaps the very worst thing that can happen to a real or a movie scientist. Lois, you played Dr. Heinemann with a wonderful, intense energy, but you've been very clear in interviews that it's not madness, you know, she's not manic. Is Dr. Heinemann is she full of rage? How would you describe her?
Oh, goodness. You've described very well what happened to her work and what the opportunity of this scene in the film with Tom Cruise, who has escaped and is trying to stay alive, basically, is the possibility that something could be redressed. I think that's what happens, basically, in that scene. Mm-hmm. So it's not so different from what we've been talking about, is it? That story is more scary to me than others.
Why?
Just the very fact of the precogs. I don't know what to make of that. You know, I don't know how to evaluate that as a story, as a potential future.
Let's ask a scientist.
Well, it's far more radical than Marjorie Prime.
Oh,
because the fundamental premise that Philip K. Dick is starting with is that somebody knows what's going to happen before it happens. This is a radical shift in our view of reality.
But isn't that sort of an algorithm?
No.
That if
No.
No. Okay, tell me
No,
why.
it's magic. I mean, the Sandra Morton character, knowing what's going to happen before it happens, doesn't really correspond to anything that we currently call technology. As with a lot of Philip K. Dick, who's always, as I think you alluded to, trying to illuminate what people do when faced with things. His stories are always about people. He injects elements of fantasy. And it's okay that it's fantasy, that, oh, someone sees the future. But because ultimately he's then asking the question, well, then what do you do about that? What ethical choices do people make? Which is, I think, what he's really interested in his stories. And I think the film gets that across.
Do you ever worry about some benign algorithm that you've created in your future reality lab getting, out and being used for something sinister?
Well, somebody once said that technology is neither good nor bad nor value neutral. Anything we do, I mean, you think of the books that have been written. Books are a technology. You have books that have liberated people, and you've had books that have been filled with hate that inspire other hate. So the technology makes us ever more powerful. The first, you spoke about 2001, the first time that proto-human picked up that bone, and hit another proto-human. There's power there.
Yeah.
That's technology. And what we do with it, though, the responsibility is always ours and always will be ours. So
I think of our president with Twitter. Right, yeah.
Yeah. So I feel as though in real life, I'm a bit like the position you were in Minority Report. I feel as though I want to produce wonderful possibilities that can help people make a better world for themselves. But the moment you put anything out into the world, now you're putting it out into the world of people, and people are complicated, and you have to maintain responsibility. If I create something, I am responsible for continuing to talk publicly about it, both for better or for worse. I can't just say, oh, not my problem.
Now I'm thinking, you've mentioned Mary Shelley, I'm thinking of that too. It's like being a parent too. Like, I made this, I'm responsible for it, at least until
responsible and yet also there are limits on what you
Right,
can do.
right.
This is, we put things into the world and we have to do our best, and we are absolutely responsible for doing our best, but there's only so much we can do because the world is a complicated place and our children will be influenced by people who are not us.
Minority Report gets so much attention for the amazingly predictive accuracy of Steven Spielberg's vision for the future that the concept of the Minority Report is often lost. But in many ways, Lois's scene in the movie really defines the difference between humans and machines. Lois, as Iris, tells Tom Cruise to go find the Minority Report, and by that she means find where human behavior did not follow the expected results envisioned by the majority's predictions. So is that possibility that people will act unpredictably always going to be the thing that separates humans from machines, do you think?
I think many things separate humans from machines. I think, of course, I really do think that the vision of a Walter Prime or a Marjorie Prime is a vision of a very, very, very fancy wind-up toy. It's a vision of Google Translate. You know, Google Translate has no idea what you're saying. It's just an algorithm that's scraping the speech and text of hundreds of millions of people and running it through a big soup and saying, oh, I see the patterns, but it's not thinking about this stuff. So I think that even saying the thing that separates us from the machines is already creating too much of a similarity. So our unpredictability is a wonderful thing about us, but it's only one wonderful thing about us. I mean, we're capable of, in love and hate and tribalism and caring and, and emotional connection. And these are not things that machines do. These are things that people do.
Well, artists and scientists, thank you both for being here. Ken, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Lois, quite an honor. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much.